We're live.
We're live, Jack.
We're
Hi,
live.
everyone.
Look at us. Hey, we've got a special guest today talking about building remote sales teams. We're joined by Greg Mccallum, and he's a sales director at fast growing company, plural. Are you involved with more than one or just one?
I am involved with more than one company. Yeah. I'm a sales
Cool.
director in one and chief commercial officer in another.
Okay, very cool. And we're here to talk about the right way to set up remote sales teams, challenges that are common in this arena. Greg, can you tell us a little bit about how you became a chief commercial officer, sales director, a bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So really the last sort of 15 years or so, I've been in and out of permanent roles alongside sort of building my own little slice of the pie, as it were, in consultancy works, primarily specializing in sales consultancy. I like to use sales consultancy rather than sales coaching because of these days that term makes a lot of people's stomach turn. So I try to avoid it. So yeah, primarily that, and also at one point really specialized in organizational psychology as well, which for me ties in very directly with sales. Unfortunately, not enough focus is given on that, but anyway, that's neither here or there. So that's kind of how I built my career really through doing that. And like I said, that was peppered over the last 15 years when I was kind of able to be tied down by opportunities that really stood out to me. So the most recent of which being Booksy, which is the international tech startup for the health, hair, and beauty sector, which is now huge. So I helped launch that in the UK and scale that. And then recently as well, this year, been pinned down by That Nursery Life and joined them as chief commercial officer to scale the commercial operations there, and then the partner company, which is Wessex Support and Supply. And I'm due to launch another project very soon with another company based out in Poland.
Interesting.
So you're doing a lot here. Can you tell us about what a typical sales team would look like at one of these companies? And are they 100% remote?
Yes, they are. So what's really different about the way we're doing things with these two companies, which I think is a sign of the times, which has certainly helped that. But having spoken to the CEO as well and knowing a bit about his background and kind of his thought process, it was always going to be different in the way that he wanted to build this organization. So the organization itself is both of the organizations I deal with are fully distributed workforces, and they always will be. And that directly informs the way in which we're building the sales teams, obviously. And yeah, what's great about that is it enables us to just find the best talent, and we're not stuck with location, having to build on a necessary, which is also the nature of the business, which allows us to do that, but not necessarily worry about building liquidity in any geographical areas or anything like that. And from a perspective of the employees themselves, well, they love that freedom, especially given the current climate, where they'll be probably sent home anyway. So that's primarily how it looks. And we're going with a fairly standard formula in terms of building these sales teams. We're able to give them a lot more perks straight from the off, which I think is great. So the normal expenditure that would be being put into an office, we calculate that, and we distribute that among the team members, whether that be equipment or treats or whatever it may be. But in terms of the actual structure of the team itself, we tend to go with lead researchers, sales development, and business development managers, and so on.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jeremy.
I was thinking quickly because all the team is distributed. Is there obvious things that are missing? Like, I'm just gonna say some random thing, but the typical someone go ring the bell when there is a sale and stuff like that contribute to the vibe of the atmosphere. Is that something that is missing and is tried to be replicated, or is that something that actually that was never needed in the first place? And what is the approach there?
No, you're right. It absolutely is missing. I mean, there's and it's worth noting as well that these two businesses I'm involved with now, that we're startups, both of them. They're not only both been created this year. And so, all of that's very early days, and the sales element of it is still very young too. It's
Okay.
very much a new thing. But especially working with remote sales teams in the past, and then kind of transferring that knowledge to now, there is certainly that element missing more now than ever. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of the concern around remote teams right now is, oh, we're missing this, instead of the conversation being around, okay, but what are we replacing it with? And I think there are a ton of solutions out there to do exactly that. And it's just about being a bit more creative, and you do need to just think outside the box a little bit in terms of how you can go about creating that buzz. And we have a high focus on creating a tool set that is creating a virtual office environment. That's a term that I like to constantly use with the team and with the organization as a whole. How can we create a virtual office environment? It's not a temporary replacement. It is the office environment, and we are going to do whatever we can to build it. So I think there are definitely things missing, but we are going to find solutions to replace them if we haven't already.
So I'm curious what you think is the toughest part about running a remote sales team.
It's the same
Having a remote sales team.
yeah. No, I think I honestly think that people's perception of it, honestly, actually is probably the most difficult thing, because it's no different from running any other team. A team is a team, a group of people who are motivated and want to get the job done, hungry salespeople, the buzz of working with them. And like going back to your question, Jeremy, like that buzz that people get, and all through Messenger and group chats, or when we have sales meetings about the sales that have been made, all that kind of stuff. That's all still there. There's no real challenge there. The challenge actually is people's perception of it, which has improved considerably this year. Not if there is a silver lining, there's one, but still, I'd hate to try and glean too many silver linings out of the current situation, obviously, but there's still a bit of a stigma around a team that's remote, let alone an entire organization. Like when you try and explain to people that we have no desire to ever want to put an office together, people are like, well, then you're not a real business. No, well, yeah, we are. A business is people. It's not a building. It's not a fancy office. It's not having a welcome desk and having to sign in. It's the people that make it happen. So I think that's the most difficult thing.
And who has this conception that you need to break down? Is it always the prospects and the clients that you're talking about, or maybe recruits? People don't want to join a remote organization as much.
It's a mixture. I mean, it's not any specific category. It's just people who haven't been exposed, in my view, to the newer way of working yet, or haven't wrapped their head around it yet. In the same way that you can speak to someone about, I don't know, like even within the last couple of years, you can speak to someone within our generation and talk about social media and bring up TikTok. And they go, what is TikTok? I'm about Facebook. That's my social media. Do you know what I mean? That's how quick things progress. And it's the same with sales. I mean, it is definitely something that more recently, because I've been doing quite a bit of recruitment, I have seen a lot more within that side of things. But then equally, once I really get my head down and start getting into speaking to prospects, then I start seeing it creep in there too. So I think it's just wherever people have a gap in their kind of understanding of where we really are, and I think also where we're going, because it would be, I think, really naive to assume that we're going to go back to the way things were at least anytime soon. But I don't think at all, really.
How do you, you're mentioning recruiting quickly. How do you go about recruiting?
How do I go about recruiting? Well, I mean, just the same as any other way. I mean, just obviously we do everything remotely. So, it's all, I mean, it's to be fair, even when I worked in office-based roles previously, sorry, I just hit my microphone. Even when I've been in office-based roles previously, I tried to do as much of the process as possible remotely, because it saves everyone's time. Especially when you're looking to set up teams in different geographical areas. Do I really want to go and spend 3 days up in Edinburgh or in Cardiff,
sure,
to interview some people, hire an office space, get them to come in, the expenses associated with it, like, especially if you're putting together a direct sales team, a field sales team, the expenses there are there already. Like, do we really need to do that anymore? Like, we're not door to door selling typewriters anymore, guys. Like, we're trying to sell, especially in SaaS. You're trying to sell SaaS solutions.
You're right.
This
was a stupid question because your whole team is remote anyway. So usually you want to see the salesperson in person when that salesperson is going to have to be selling in person. But in your case, you're all doing remote anyway.
My point wasn't. I'm not trying to say it was a stupid question. My point was this.
No, it was a stupid question. I say so it's okay. You can just agree.
If it was a stupid question, I would have said, don't worry. But no, not at all. My point is just that it's kind of even prior to really being hyper focused on building remote teams, even building teams in based in my local area, I would have spent the majority of the process, if not sometimes all of it, actually doing it remote. Because why do we need to bring people in? I mean, especially when you're hiring someone that already that already has a full-time position and they're looking for a change. How difficult it is for that person, if they're looking for a change, to get several days off, sometimes to book in interviews, to arrive, somewhere face to face, especially if it's, second stage, third stage, fourth stage interviews. We, as businesses, as recruiters, we need to make it easier. And we have the ability to do that. I don't think you can really get that much more. There are some things you get, but you can't get that much more from meeting someone face to face. If you're really good at sales, you can pick up on body language, on tics, on the various things, whether it's in a phone conversation, in a video call, or in person. It doesn't really matter. And the same applies to recruitment, in my view.
So, gents, I want to lay out a couple topics I want to make sure we cover before we break. One of them is, do you hire generalists or specialists? Do you have dedicated lead gen people, then dedicated closers? I want to get back to something that you had mentioned in an email, Greg, which is about how engagement sort of correlates with prospecting.
Yeah.
Right. And finally, just ending maybe with some tactical, okay, here's the first step I do when building a team, then the second step, then finally we do this. Jeremy, do you want to add or subtract to that outline?
I think it's awesome. I think we should run with that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
So, I mean, that's an interesting question. So, with the variety of startups I work with, is always different. And the large part of that, undoubtedly comes down to one major factor, which is how much they want to spend on people, right? A lot of the startups I've worked with have had literally zero budget in when it comes to sales. They want to sort of create a sales team to start generating revenue, to start building, to start generating that sort of organic growth and so on. And in those situations, we'll quite often go for a commission-only based sales strat in the early stages, and building up a sales pipeline of potential recruits, and within that is a similar sort of framework, which is, I think you do need a almost a bit of a ragtag team there, of having a bit of a diversification of backgrounds within sales. So whether that be SaaS background, direct sales background, online inside sales background, really sort of diversify it a little bit, and then also not always necessarily from a completely senior position, because A, sometimes you can't afford it, but B, entry level salespeople I've worked with over the last sort of 10 years have actually impressed me the most, especially when dealing with more complex products. So if we're talking SaaS, PaaS, iPaaS, fintech, all that kind of stuff.
Why do you think that is?
They don't know any better. You know what I mean? There's it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and that's not to say that if someone's experienced it's automatically a bad thing. That's not what I mean by any means. It's just that I feel that they're, especially if we're talking about a lot of Zoom calls in a day, prospecting on LinkedIn frantically, prospecting on Instagram frantically, and Twitter, and just this incredible multitasking of just being constantly on your phone, checking your computer, just that level of, and that's not even talking about managing a CRM. Like the amount of people that I know that are extraordinarily accomplished, experienced, skilled salespeople that cannot, to save their life, keep a CRM up to date. You know what I mean? That these days, that's make or break.
Yeah, it's almost like Jimi Hendrix not knowing how to read music. You know, but then again, he's a savant. So
exactly.
So what's the takeaway here? It's like today more than ever, even if you're the best closer in the company, you still need to be able to manage a CRM like sort of your IT person might be expected to, or am I guessing that wrong?
So kind of what I'm getting at there is that there are certain, I think, soft skills that can be developed. There is certain amounts of mindset that can't. And a lot of that these days, mindset is, in my view at least, tied directly with technical competence and fluency. And the demand on salespeople these days, especially as they are predominantly becoming more inside-based sales, and that skill set being vastly more important than a direct sales skill set these days, is that lays the foundations. You can coach and mentor a person with that foundation to close. You can coach and mentor a person with that foundation to tweak their pitch, to play around with their prospecting, first outreach email, their follow-ups, their whatever. You can coach that. You can't coach how to frantically multitask that enormous amounts of different platforms, and that entire thing. So that I think is the takeaway.
So for our listeners here, you are hiring generalists when pressed on that question, and specifically entry level, more specifically 100% commission in the beginning. It depends.
It depends. I'm using that as the main example because that's what I've been doing more of recently.
That's fine. And
that's okay.
For the most part.
And that does seem to be the more. That seems to be the thing that's rising in popularity the most, in demand from what I do. I don't know if you guys have found the same. Have you found that to be a similar trend? Like, I don't know. Like, is it just me? Because I often wonder if I'm living in my own bubble sometimes.
Yeah, my take on that is I do prefer having a generalist that I can bring in and share our processes much more than somebody who's a pro, but they do things a little bit differently. I mean, it's really hard to get to a working sales playbook. And once a company gets there, it would be a shame to just bring in somebody who doesn't use it. And so because of that, I'm definitely more on board of bringing in someone a little greener and showing them from the very beginning, here's how we do it here. And if you're willing to execute and work very hard, you'll be fine. So I'm on the same page there. Specialists, unless they're consultants for me, I generally don't like to work with.
Yeah, that's funny. We keep on having this conversation with Jack for own businesses, and I experience both sides. With developers, not really with sales, but I think the parallel is pretty striking here. When a developer comes in and he's got this whole set of experience, usually they want to change and then do the thing that they used to. So they want to refactor the code the way they like it. And plus they are a little bit more diva kind of thing. And it's harder to manage. And we probably don't have as much to offer as someone greener, which we can train to a new system, that get curious. So there's a lot of reason, and we had a lot of success with more junior person that we bring in and train and grow because everyone's just winning from that. So I got the same here.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear that because I do think I mean, there are some other benefits to it as well, right? Which is just the simple one, like I kind of touched on a minute ago as well. It's cheaper. Like you're going to be able to pay people less. Let's be practical. Let's be real about it.
Well, you should read No Rules from the culture at Netflix. I think that'll be very interesting as well. They got a completely radical different approach, which is you get the less people, but you pay them top of the market. So
that's great for Netflix to be able to say, but they're in a position to be able to say that.
Well, they're living also in California, and they have to compete against Google and Facebook, and if they don't, then they're going to end up with the crumbs.
Exactly. So. And let's be real as well. Big companies like that love to put statements out like that for PR reasons as well. Right?
No, I don't think it is PR reason. It actually do make total sense in what they are trying to do and how they are trying to achieve. They're trying to achieve high talent concentration, and the easiest way to get talent is to get people who have already demonstrated they're talented. Where at our case, at our level, what we're doing is we're finding the potential new talents, and then we're growing them, right? So it's a different approach.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix started as like 2 people just almost, going kind of door to door and just being very scrappy.
Exactly. If like people per hour was around right then, they'd be using it too, right? To get their logo made. To like it's easy to say that when you've made it. Like,
you know what, Jack? Let's ask Reed to come on the show and let's discuss it with him, right?
Call him out. Tag him on. But every business has to start somewhere, and it's you can't say that to I don't know, let's say 2 founders of a company, 2 entrepreneurs who have remortgaged their houses for the 2nd time to make this business because of for the 3rd year in a row they haven't broken even. Like they're going, if they want to put their chips on something, they're gonna sometimes have to go for the cheaper option. And if it means that they are also then able to get people on board who are young, who may be a bit hungrier, and who are passionate.
I disagree with that. I think this is just a different approach of how you do business, but that's fine. Some people go bootstrap, some people go raising funds. So I guess
it entirely depends on the organization and the startup. Right. I'm just using that as a hypothetical because of quite often that is the way that businesses are built. There of course is plenty of other routes, but that is one too.
Yeah, excuse me, gents. I'm just looking at the time here, and crikey, we've already gone 30 minutes here. So let's keep going. Greg, tell us what engagement has to do with prospecting. I'll let you go for it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I suppose I should probably pepper that in with kind of my observations in the last couple of months with prospecting and how that's kind of drastically changed, in my view, at least. And I'd be really interested to hear if you guys have found the same thing. But I feel like people are a lot more open than ever to just connect and have a chat. And I think that people are checking their email and their LinkedIn a lot more, and they're actively engaged, and they're more curious. And from a strategy perspective, obviously that's fantastic. That makes things that much easier. It does, of course, I think, make things that much more, give them maybe that much more potential for losing sight, being maybe distracted by those that aren't necessarily entirely interested. I'm finding a fair amount of time wasting, a lot more than previously.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have had similar experience.
So you're saying just engagement across the board is up, meaning people are more likely to open and reply to a message, though not necessarily close with you 6 months down the line. Maybe just
close rate has gone up too. Yeah, that has gone up too. But then equally, like you would expect, time wasting has gone up a little as well. But no, overall, people are obviously a lot more.
Are we talking about US, UK, or
and during COVID specifically?
I'm dealing with the UK primarily at the moment, the UK market, because we're just launching in the UK, and during COVID, I've noticed that ramp up. I think what a lot of it comes down to as well is people are very. Not everyone sort of has a dialing system where someone can call the regular office and it will sort of forward to their home or whatever it may be. So their go-to is email, and so there's kind of that, I don't know, maybe I was thinking about this the other night, maybe it's that desire to want to keep the notifications clear, you know, that when you see a notification somewhere and it just bugs you, you want to get it clear, you want to reply to everything. Maybe it's that, I don't know. Now people are sat in front of their computers all day, but either way, it's good for prospecting.
I'd say so. So right now, what we don't have is the opportunity to buy from our in-person networking groups, which I think has been a competing channel for us digital salespeople before, right? So I'm kind of seeing similar things, Greg. I'm not sure if I can chalk it up to anything. I know two things have been working a little bit better lately, you know, since COVID, and that is appealing to this, hey, we're all in this together kind of thing. So a lot of my outreach will harp on what's going on right now and just kind of calling it like it is, like just saying, you know, looking to connect and, you know, talk to other related professionals in this tough time. And I think people can understand that very clearly. So all of a sudden, we're on a level playing field. We're closer to home because, forgive the cliche, but we're all in this together in a lot of ways. And I think those two things are helping us out. Although specifically on LinkedIn, I've heard from a number of people who have tried the platform. I think it had this like boom and bust where people could get away with like automate everything, care very little about quality, and it would deliver. They were happy blowing up, and then they got like slapped by LinkedIn. So I think we're coming back to this quality first approach. And
absolutely, yeah.
To me, if we're emailing or messaging really personalized and actually remembering there's a human being that's going to receive this, and would I actually stop what I'm doing to reply to it if I got the same message? I mean, the doors are wide open for that kind of approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still, yeah. What about you, Jeremy? I'm curious because, you know, QuickMail users are sending half the emails in the world.
Well, COVID had a small impact initially, but I think it was more like a knee-jerk reaction or like a shocking, like, oh, what's going on? You know, people were a little bit like, should I carry on cold outreach? Should I not? You know, is it insensible, you know, or not?
Right.
And turns out that it lasted like 2-3 weeks. I think we did a webinar actually on the stats. Yeah. And then since then, you know, back up, and now it carries on going up. So for us, it's not just like business as usual. It's effectively now that's growing as well. And I think part of this is because of what you said, Greg, like a lot more people, you know, get more engaged. Maybe because they discovered that their 1 hour, 2 hours commit a day could actually be used for doing something else. I don't know, like training on hula hoops with your hula hoops or doing some other stuff. I don't know. But point is that, you know, people are more accessible now, and that shows because our agency are like absolutely killing it. They are growing like crazy. Even more people are, because I think it put also a spotlight that this is an okay way now. This is okay to do it. You know, in the past, when you jump on a Zoom call and you see someone at home, you say like, are you a real company? You know, kind of thing and so on. But with COVID now, it becomes like, that's fine. So I've been always, you know, remote for more than 6 years and never really had, you know, a problem. But I did notice that with the call I'm making now, it's just like, it's not even like an iBat, you know. It's clear now that it's okay. You're at home. Oh yeah, sure. Me too. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things for sure, and I do think a lot of it is kind of down to that feeling of just, I don't know, bringing everyone a bit down to earth. Do you know what I mean? And realize humanizing everyone, and even to the point of if you get a sales email, you feel, you know, there's a human behind it. And you know, Jack, you touched on a really important point there too, which is you know, is obviously, you know, a conversation everywhere now, but it's super important to mention. It is customization, personalization, and that's super important too, in whatever form it takes. But that, coupled with the fact that I think people are already more receptive to conversation, I think it's just and just to new experiences and being open to using technology, I think is a great combination.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of drop a a tip for anybody listening. Specifically, what I'm seeing work best is if 90% of the message is, and I've said this on the podcast, but 90% of that message is just about the prospect. And then, but here's the thing, like we had Nathaniel Bibby come on the show, and he talked about his like LinkedIn outreach was like 100% on the prospect. And it didn't really even say a lot about the product or what they were selling. And I'm kind of doing this with that approach now, because I think the prospect should have context. One that's going to remove tire kickers, which is the absolute best thing about dropping in like a background about what it is that you do want to discuss, given that 90% of the message is prospect focused. And two, that's your chance to, without sounding salesy, it's your chance to kind of throw in a teaser. You know, just imagine you had one sentence out of a 4-sentence message, 3 of them only your prospect, and you just had 7 words that you could mention what it is that you hope to talk about. To me, that's like the sweet spot we're finding. 90% prospect, 10% us. I don't know, Greg, kind of the same, or do you ever start conversations 100% on the product or 100% on the prospect?
Never 100% on the product. Never 100% on the product. I mean, I'm with you on that. You know, 90 to 100% on them, and
100% on a product is 100% in a spam folder. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the equivalent of meeting someone for the first time, and the first words that come out of themselves, they're only talking about themselves. You know, a bit like me.
No doubt about it.
It happened to me once.
No doubt about it.
The guy had no idea who I am. It was like so funny. Anyway.
So I'm laughing a little bit inside because I had a call yesterday, Jeremy, with a friend of ours, and he basically said he built his whole business like writing the crappiest cold emails, and he just happened to nail this thing that his market was going through, and there he is humming along nicely on 100% product focused emails. But
you have to share that with me offline.
Yeah, well, but anyways, listeners, the present and future is prospect focused without a doubt, right?
100%.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. So, Greg, should we move on from engagement and kind of get into some tactical, here's a couple steps on how to build a team? Go with that? Absolutely, by all means, yeah. Okay, sweet. So you walk into a company, they've hired you, they say, we need a sales team. Let's say they're a little bit leaner than the Netflixes of the world. What's step one? I wouldn't work with them. If they're not Netflix, I don't want to know, because I like their policies, the way that they treat their staff. Yeah. Okay. Right. No. And we can go quickly. If you just say step one is send out, message on the appropriate job boards. Okay, everybody gets that. That's cool. Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not assuming that your audience is kind of at that level. So, sure. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, job boards. No. So
I'm gonna drill on this one. You're mentioning, obviously, new starter are really good. What job board will you go after, for example, for getting those people like fresh? Would you actually go worldwide with different time zone?
It's all going to depend. It depends entirely. If we're talking about the organization, but
it always depends. But let's try to pick a sample, pick something.
Yeah, one of our companies, right?
Yeah, and anything and everything. There's often this. I mean, I don't claim to ever be in the recruitment field. I'm in sales. I'm in commercial.
That's fine.
But there's quite often this thing talked about that I see peripherally in recruitment, which is always try and maintain one tool that works well because it's easy to manage. You can build a pipeline on it. That's what I've heard. I could be wrong there, but this is just what I hear through my sort of friends in recruiting. I couldn't disagree with that more. I think you need to, there's so many, just like everything at the moment, there are so many platforms for everything. And you need to just get out there because of, who knows when you might be found. I've found opportunities in working with businesses in the most random places before. It's not just all about your LinkedIn's or your Indeeds or your CV libraries. You need to be actively engaging with an enormous amount of platforms, both as a recruiter and as a job seeker. So like
what would be a weird place you'd find somebody?
Well, just for example, like in our local area, we have something called the Friday Ad. which is like a classified ads kind of job posting, buy, swap, sell kind of thing. That's great for finding sort of more local talent for this sort of this region, I guess. And then equally, things like Facebook groups, that are usually quite local. They may only have 100 people in them, 200 people, but that's still 100 people. That's still 200 people. You never know when people might see something.
Like, are you talking about a Facebook group that's like London job seekers or London sales?
Exactly, something like that.
Something,
I mean, obviously,
right?
You still have to use your Indeeds, your LinkedIn's. You still have to promote your ads and all that. But I think that a recruiter, if you have an internal one or if you use an external one, should make the time to just get it out there in as many other smaller channels as possible, because talent is out there. It really is, but it needs to be found.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say you get out there. Yeah, Jeremy, you're probably going to say.
Yeah, I want to jump in on this one.
Sure.
Once, let's say you got like 200, 300 applicants, whatever. How do you actually go through the process? You're not going to be able to spend 5 minutes per applicant. It's like it's consuming. You're going to have plenty of people who are not worth the time to investigate. They may not even have read your job post properly and stuff like that. What do you actually do? What's your filtering system or
Well, I mean, again, obviously, there's lots of depends, sure. but like to be general, like let's say, for example, there's been a few occasions where I've had to straight from the off put teams together of between 15 and 20, just straight from scratch like that. SDRs.
So everyone comes in and perform on the job, and after 2 days, they are fired or they stay, kind of thing.
What? Sorry, what do you mean?
If you got like those 100 applicants, come on in. And then
no, you have to be thorough. You have to have a robust process in place. So I think that's a good example to give to answer that question, because that is when you're dealing in high volume. Sometimes 300, 400, 500 applicants, and I'd be very rarely doing it solo, but still taking it on a lead. There are a huge amount of tools out there that are helpful, quite often built into many of these platforms that I would always suggest taking advantage of, and then some external ones too. This is what I mean earlier about sort of there are those solutions. You've just got to find them.
Sure, but we can't talk in generalities, because otherwise everything is possible, everything is stuff. So what do you actually do? You're going to your Facebook group, you're getting 100 applicants. What do you do with that?
Okay, so I use Indeed. There's a couple of the assessment processes on there that are really fantastic for assessing competency in communication, written, critical thinking, those kinds of things.
Cool.
And then they also have a feature which allows them to answer recorded questions. So Indeed will call them, and then they can leave recorded messages to very basic questions that you would probably answer in a phone screening, and that's done, and you can listen to it and that is so useful. You can delegate that to a team. You can do that yourself. I'll be doing it on a coffee break or a lunch break, just listening, having it in the background, taking notes while drinking my coffee. I can multitask. I can get these things done. I even have, what I've done a couple of times as well is once I've got something quite interesting playing in the background when I've been eating a sandwich, I'm like, oh, that's quite interesting. I've clicked the sound to text option on a document, and it's listening to my computer, and it's copying that on text, and I've got it as a note, and I'm sticking that on. You know what I mean? So
nice.
It's just those kinds of tools. There, like I said, there are a ton of them, but those are the ones that I use quite regularly, and that speeds it up because of immediately you can get. I guarantee you, out of 100 people applying for a job, if you have that part of the process, only about 20% of them will even bother to do that. So you're immediately saved a ton of time. And then from there, whether depending on the role, you may have extra tasks for them to complete. And then, of course, there's, the first interview via Zoom and so on. Those additional steps and just asking for commitment from those steps will further whittle it down. So to go back to my previous example of sometimes putting together a team of 15 to 20 all in one hit, we could have 500 applicants in one go. Before we even get to stage one, we're down to about 80 or 90. So it's so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us some example of questions you actually give? That's and why you would ask those questions, like, what skill or what would you infer from those answers? Like
for which kind of roles specifically?
That's a good
Let's
question.
Let's do SDR.
Yeah, I was about to say that one. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, these days, SDR roles, I think one of the biggest questions I will want to get is to kind of try and gauge questions around, and I will say a specific one or two in a moment, but is to try and gauge competency around kind of what we were talking about earlier, about that ability to be incredibly self-motivated, to be, high performing, balancing a whole load of different technologies and skill sets.
Are you self-motivated? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. So it's questions around that. And that is the best one to ask. I find generally asking if people make sourdough is a good way of being able to gauge their commitment to something. That takes a lot of time. So, anyone who makes sourdough in my book, then they get hired immediately.
My kind of guy. Yeah.
But so no, the questions that tend to, I mean, really just sort of competency questions and really assessments, in fact, help more on for SDRs, in my view, because the assessments will go mostly around critical thinking and written communication, and those are absolutely key. And then I will quite often ask questions specifically around their answers to do with that, because I get quite bored of interviews. I don't want to have a set list of questions I ask the same people every day. It should be personalized. If we're telling salespeople to personalize their pitches and the way we deal with things with prospects, we should be doing the same thing with recruitment, in my view.
Yeah. So we've got 10 more minutes. I'm just curious. It's impossible to cover the whole team building process in the next 10 minutes here.
And I do
you want to fast?
About
No, it's great. These are really in depth, and Jeremy, cut me off if you want to take it a different direction.
But cut me off as well if I.
Yeah, no worries, Greg. So why don't we just, I don't know, take me to the part that we haven't covered yet. That's probably the most critical. That if somebody was listening, actively trying to build a team, and they heard everything we just talked about, what's that one bit that they haven't got yet that's going to trip them up if they don't go about it carefully?
That is a really good question. I guess like that, I haven't given it that much thought because I've been so entrenched in it for so long. Trying to step back from a little bit and looking it in.
I'm thinking maybe it's training. Maybe, the first day, making sure they have the tools needed in order to.
Yeah, you're actually along the right line of thought there that just popped into my head. I think the biggest thing is onboarding. Because you don't have that luxury of being able to bring someone in the office on their first day or first week and kind of accidentally on purpose neglecting them because you don't have enough for them to do, but sitting them with someone or in the corner with a coffee for a half a day, you can get away with it, right? Because they're technically there, they're technically working. You can't get away with that these days. You need to have not just a solid, very robust plan for recruitment, but for onboarding is absolutely crucial. You want people to be able to feel part of the team from the off, to be learning, to set the tone immediately, if not more immediately than you would in person, and expectations, and get them to work. That's what they want. That people, when they start a job, people want to work. Get them to work. Get them doing something. Get them building something. Get them making something. That's super important, I think.
Do you have examples of ramping up an SDR? How would you go about it?
Yeah,
an SDR first day, what did they do?
Yeah, an SDR specifically. I mean, really, just I think from my perspective, I've always had it kind of several check boxes, right? Are we demonstrating our culture? Are we demonstrating our process? Are we demonstrating our expectations? Are we and whatever sort of activities fit around that? I think ones that really help are getting people involved in decision making early, even at a very small level, and getting feedback from people early. Literally on the first day, I will have people jump in on maybe call recording listening sessions, maybe going through different templates with other new people or fairly recent hires, and asking for their input. What do you think of this sales copy? What do you think of that ad we put on, that we boosted on whatever platform the other day? What did you think of how that copy read? I want to know, because they want to be part of the team, and it's great for me as a leader to be able to assess where they are, how they're thinking about that sort of thing. So it serves a lot of purposes.
Yeah. So when you said get some input on the sales copy, inside, I almost just like died right away, because I know what happens
Doesn't mean I'm
when
going to listen
somebody.
to it.
No, exactly. So great point there, because
Yeah.
I know designers who are maybe listening. You show a logo to somebody, everybody has an opinion about it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody has a better idea.
It's
So
better in Blue Jack, you know that. Yeah.
right, and it's okay. So Greg, like,
Always better in blue.
are you just kind of gauging to see how their sales brain might work, if they have a knack for it, and just almost asking that question just as a test, zero in intention of getting their input, or like sometimes you get surprised and say, that's really good feedback, let's edit.
Input is always good. Feedback is always good. So maybe a slight pushback there on your kind of your sickly response, because of I wouldn't bring anything up and present it to anyone for feedback unless I wanted feedback on it. So if it was something we were happy with, that we knew was working, then leave it alone, right?
That's a good one.
But
really, okay.
Yeah, but if it's something that, you know what, we're not quite sure, maybe it's been an ongoing discussion in the office for a while, and not just sales copy, but
it's more like a fresh pair of eyes, right? Someone who is not in too close to the problem.
Exactly. But it also does serve those other purposes you just mentioned. I mean, coming from an organizational psychology background too, for me, nothing is worth doing throughout a day unless it serves multiple purposes, even on the micro level. So if I can also, from that gauge as a leader, and then from other team leads being in the meetings, can gauge things too, because we have these conversations. We're talking about constantly assessing people and building people up. If we can glean things out of that too in their process, how they give criticism, how they give feedback, how they take feedback and criticism themselves. Like you said, someone gives a bit of feedback, we may say, actually, that's thank you for your input, but that's actually not really the kind of point of this. But thank you. You can glean much more about that reaction than you could have done in any of the interview questions.
Gotcha. So it's kind of a leadership, let's say, activity.
And it also gets people in the mud with you immediately. They feel part of the team, they feel part of the culture, they get that the whole idea of the culture, which is what I would like to always build anyway, is a coming with solutions, not problems culture. So yeah, it ticks, like I said, that checklist of boxes.
Yeah. And going back to the very beginning of our conversation, I remember you said we no longer have this in-person culture. We've got to find ways to establish it virtually, and this sounds like a tactical bit of advice on making sure that new hires feel listened to and feel like they're a part of this process.
Yeah, ask them how they feel about the logo of the company.
Always. Going back to your original question, that is the first question I asked. Well, the one I asked straight after the sourdough question. What do you think of our logo?
You're kidding.
There we go. We got a little bit of a roadmap now.
Yeah. Write this down.
Okay, that's good.
And then package it and sell it. $9.99 a month. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. All right, Jeremy. Anything else that's rattling around up there before we start to do our closing outros?
I'm racking my brain a little bit. Like I'm
Greg,
trying
same question
to see the parallel with actually how I hire and how I train and how I onboard. So my next question to you will be, when do you, and those are the tough questions that people don't necessarily ask all the time, but
I like tough questions. Give me tough questions.
Yeah, well, I think they're tough for me, and to some extent, everything happens on my culture level. So we hire based on culture, we promote based on culture, and we also fire based on culture.
Yeah.
And I guess the question to you is like, how long does that take to realize I've made a bad hire, for example, and that person needs to go?
That is a good question, and it is a tough question. I think you should know within the first week, if it happens at all. I mean, and if it does happen, you need to seriously evaluate your recruitment process. There's nothing wrong with admitting. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you need to improve your recruitment process. It's so easy to blame the hire. That's such a bad mentality to have. It's our fault for hiring the wrong fit. We 100%. Made the mistake. And yeah, you can tell immediately, quite often in the first day, like, and especially if you're really entrenching people in the process from the beginning, because of otherwise toxicity or just poor performance can really fly under the radar for so long, especially in sales, because it's so easy, because there's so much room we give people especially in certain sales arenas for ramp up, that you can really ride that out for quite some time if you really wanted to, and you can ride on other people's coattails, and you can really milk it. So yeah, getting people involved in things that have, not necessarily hidden KPIs, but kind of areas of assessment beyond just sales ability for that cultural thing, I think is probably the most important metric for me, because I agree, culture across the board.
Did you have like a concrete example of something you changed in your recruitment process as a consequence of a failure to hire the right person?
Oh yeah, a ton. I mean, the one that sticks out the most to me is just that simple thing I mentioned earlier about refining the recruitment process from not having to call everyone in all the time, because that also does is it from the people doing the hiring, it makes them feel like the amount of time they're investing needs to generate a result. So if you get 100 candidates and you've spent a month during the whole process getting people in, scheduling meetings, this and that, by the end of it, we have to hire someone, even if there isn't a fit. That is, I guarantee you, whenever a business does a hiring run, the majority of businesses, when they do a hiring run, they hire someone. You don't have to hire someone. If you haven't found the right person, leave it alone. So make the hiring process, the recruitment process, simple and effective, and trim the fat. So then that way, if you do screw up and you actually haven't found someone, you're not kicking yourself going, oh, we wasted a ton of resources. It's okay. We can just flip the switch and do it again. I think that's one of the major factors.
Great takeaway.
Yeah, great advice. That's awesome. Yeah, okay. Well, with that, I think that was a great place to end the conversation. Certainly impossible to cover, like we mentioned, hiring from start to finish in an hour, but certainly I think you helped show us some different sides of the process that I'm sure our listeners are going to appreciate. So thank you for that, Greg.
You're welcome.
Hold on a second. Like, you're closing the show.
We're not letting you go yet. We're not letting you go yet. Okay. Jeremy, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to know, one of the things that I love to do is always read different books and, get exposed to different perspective, different way of thinking. Like I mentioned, No Rules, which I absolutely love at the moment. I even actually gave that to my employees. What book do you actually recommend your SDR or other salespeople actually read so they become like better at their job?
You mean beside my book, Jeremy?
Of course, beside your book.
So besides my book.
Can you plug your book?
Plug your book. And is everyone getting it when they start at your company?
No, actually, they have to pay for it, just like everyone else.
Jesus, that's part of the recruitment process. Show me your ticket that you bought it.
Yeah, show me your receipt. Otherwise, get out of here. No, they paid for it like everyone else. I'm not running a charity here. It's not a sales book per se. It's actually a reference book. So kind of going back to one of my earlier points, which was about how I don't think people there's a gap in sales, and there seems to be a large percentage of salespeople trying to catch up with all of the other salespeople, the newer salespeople that seem to be in this newer digital world of sales. There's a gap there, and I've noticed a lot of people really struggle to keep up. So actually, this is just modern sales terminology. It's 274 words in terms that is used in modern sales terminology, with 12 of the most popular modern sales frameworks in the back as well. The amount of people that don't understand basics modern sales terminology, which is shorthand for getting work done quickly, and that don't understand modern sales frameworks and methodologies, is astounding to me, especially people who have been in sales for like 10, 15, 20 years. So yeah, that's the purpose of this. But shameless self-promotion aside, I actually tend to recommend most people to available on Amazon, by the way. I tend to I tend to actually recommend, and it's really annoying, I haven't got the book up here with me, but there's my library downstairs is mostly full of psychology books. And especially recently, I've really started getting into my cyber psychology. It's going to bug me. I can't remember her name now. Dr. Mary something. I can maybe send it to you guys later, and if you want to attach it to the description or whatever, you feel free to. But it's around cyber psychology and our relationship with technology, and I think actually that's far more useful for SDRs these days than the vast majority of sales books, which are just trying to sell consultancy services or platforms, and not really provide any real advice.
I like that.
Would she be Dr. Mary Aiken?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Which one is it then?
That's Mary, MaryAiken.com. She's a speaker and researcher, and she wrote The Cyber Effect. Is that right?
The Cyber Effect. Yeah, great book. I highly recommend it. It's funny because that recent documentary just came out on Netflix about kind of the
the social stuff, social network
about the social media stuff. I actually got really annoyed by that documentary because it was all dramatic music, like it was a horror movie talking about how terrible social media is.
What else do you expect? Psychology for the mass market is not going to be very interesting.
Yeah. The nuance is lost in 2020, right? But that's the great thing about this book is that the Cyber Effect is it funnily enough it hooks you with that kind of doom and gloom thing at the beginning, but once you really get your teeth into it, it's far more nuanced and complex, and really it opens your eyes. And really, I would just say anything around. Fantastic book.
Yep.
That's the one. Mm-hmm. And really anything around, I think salespeople need to be reading a lot more books around psychology, and really making that their focus. It should be the staple diet of any true salesperson. And sociology.
Do you know the game? Do you know the game? Like, the pickup artist stuff. That was huge as well for understanding how sales was working for me.
Yeah.
I come from a very nerdy place, so obviously, everything sales was totally foreign to me at that time. It's women psychology, pickup artist stuff.
What's the title of the book?
It's called The Game. I don't recall Neil something. I don't recall exactly the name. Damn,
Let's find
I've been
out.
put on spot here. We're live. I'm screwed.
Neil Strauss, right?
That's
Neil
the one.
Yeah.
Penetrating the secret society of pickup artists. How about it?
Not only it's fun to read, but psychology-wise, it's amazing. Like, you never answer a straight question with a straight answer. You always ask another question first, and if they answer your question, then it's okay to answer them. So, for example, if someone is asking you your age, then instead of telling the age or asking them like, what do you ask or stuff like that, you just say guess. And, it's like, and then there is this sort of like relationship that develops, which is interesting. And I think that's great. The peacocking effect and all those sort of things actually works pretty well. You can actually apply the peacocking effect in your own Zoom call. You could have something very strange behind you, like, in your room. And exactly, like, people actually ask me about my treadmill that I hide behind me. I got a treadmill behind me, and yes, I use it every day. But the point is that, it's interesting, and that's the sort of thing that actually
mystery.
Intrigue. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah. Mystery and intrigue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think generally speaking, those are great. I think as well, what's really important is we always talk in these days in terms of knowledge being in book form. I love a book. I think you can't beat a good book, but also I think it would be stupid of us to assume that the 20-something gets excited. The 20-something-year-old salesperson is going to get excited about picking up a book, walking around Waterstones and trying to find a psychology book. And
but here's the question: the one who does, won't they actually have an age, or be better off?
No, because there's an audiobook. There's YouTube. There's podcasts. So and I think So I wanted to say it because I think that there's some people I've met which are like so anti anything knowledge that isn't in a book, and I find that a little bit offensive to other generations.
Yeah, that's you can become.
Yeah, it is. It's like this thing at the moment. Like if Bill Gates reads 20 books a day, so therefore you should come on.
Well,
do what you want.
What is a book? I mean, not to get too off on a tangent, but it's basically just a place to store words.
We're already at around
Pluto. Here's one. Here's one I made.
There you go.
There's a book.
That's right. So no, my point is, like, if you can store words through audio or video or paper or a PDF, it doesn't really matter
It's
that
organized knowledge.
Exactly,
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
I think YouTube is
Although-
my staple, to be honest.
Is it?
Yeah.
I find YouTube too shallow in terms of, it's very hard to go deep into one topic, like with a book. You're gonna get like plenty of videos, and most of them will scratch the surface. It's really hard to find like a series of video that will take you deeper onto on a subject on a vertical level. Where with a book, you have this potential of 200 page to actually go drill down. You're not going to have like 200 page unless it's a really bad book, but you're not going to have 200 page that attack the same surface understanding on different point of view. And I think that's what I really like in a book. Audible is perfect as well. I mean, I listen to that on my way to work or when I'm training and stuff like that. So
and podcasts. I think podcasts are probably the best form of curating information and inputting information in your brain that there is today. Because as long as you've got the time, you can get multiple opinions in one. You can get it in a way that doesn't feel like work. But I would say with the YouTube thing, though, I kind of disagree slightly. I think just like with a good book, it's easy to find a crap book. There's a lot of crap books, ones that you can get to the end and go, oh, I was hoping it was going to go a bit more deeper, but it never did. And it's the same with YouTube. But if someone can recommend you something, you will find it. So it's just, I think it's the same thing with YouTube. If you know where to look, I think there is some pretty amazing stuff in there too.
Fair point. Taken.
Okay, cool. So let's wrap it up here with a couple of bullet points. Starting at the top, engagement appears to be up. So use that to your advantage. I would say connect with prospects, be human, and use that 90-10 ratio when you're deciding how much to speak about you and the prospect. Creating a digital sales team is quite involved, but you need to be able, my favorite takeaway was just, if you hire incorrectly, A, you don't need to. It's fine to do a hiring run without bringing someone on, and B, it's your process, not the person. That was my favorite two takeaways. Jeremy, do you have one or two?
Man, I got the memory of a goldfish, so I internalize concepts, ideas, but I can't really split them back. So I'm gonna pass on that one.
That memorable.
The two one you said were actually good nuggets for sure. That's something.
What about my comment about sourdough? I think that was very poignant. I think it's very on topic at the moment. It's very 2020, and it's on the tip of every sales expert's tongue. So
that's exactly right. Crikey, that's right. Okay, gents. Greg, where can people find you? Where can they pick up your book? I'll start by sharing. If you want to find Greg on LinkedIn, that's linkedin.com/in/GREGMACUK.
Greg Mac. Keep it simple because my actual surname's a nightmare. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, LinkedIn is my go-to platform. Cool. And my sales book, The Little Handy Book of Modern Sales Terminology, is available on Amazon all around the world. It's the digital version's like $3.99. And that's pounds. I have no idea what that is in dollars because who keeps track of that?
14 bucks.
14 bucks. Is it? Oh, it's still dollar's still going then, is it? It's still a thing. Well done. And then paperback is some money too. So yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, pick up the book and give Greg a shout out on LinkedIn. Tell him thanks.
Thanks very much, guys. Pleasure.
All right.
You bet. Thanks, man.